Severn a testé positif, donc elle ne fera pas son discours.
Good day, everybody. I'm at the 7th Summit for Subnational Governments and Cities at COP15, of course. So it's going to be a good couple of days at the, it's a Sunday, strangely, but today and Monday is this summit. And apparently it's the biggest of the 7, and it's basically bringing together all cities and even different provinces from around the world. Subnational governments, you see. So it's important for Quebec, it's important for Montreal. And everyone's here, of course. So it's a special day.
Vous asseyez là, on vous présente et vous dirigez le podium ici.
Pascal, c'est quoi ton rôle exactement?
Logistique, communication.
Oh my God.
Média.
C'est fou dans un événement comme ça.
Constamment sollicité.
Ouais, hein.
Tu vas le voir.
Même par moi.
Oui. Ça fait plaisir. Je suis volant aujourd'hui, puis même pour le reste aussi de la semaine. Donc,
Volant, ça veut dire?
un peu partout.
Ouais, c'est ça.
Polyvalent, volant. En fait, je peux me déplacer en quelques secondes, comme Mario Bros avec une étoile.
So, what's your name and what are you doing here?
Hello, my name is Anthony Horn. I work as a professional master of ceremonies and speaker, and today I have the honor of basically running the show.
Sorry.
Wonderful.
See you later.
Yeah.
C'est moi la priorité ici.
Ah ouais, avec raison.
Stand-by, on va faire le 2 minutes. On est en stand-by. Je suis prête pour avec Anthony pour le 2 minutes.
Ouais, mais
Dear guests, we invite you to please take your places. We are starting in less than 2 minutes.
au début est très important. Donc, merci beaucoup. À tout à l'heure. Absolument, absolument. Bonjour. Vous avez une introduction?
And greetings as well to everyone that's online joining us. So please take your places so we may begin. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. My name is Anthony Horn, and I'll be your master of ceremonies for this unique event. Now, before we begin, useful information for this event. Simultaneous translation is provided in English, en français, in Espanol, Hua Ching Wang. There are also tea times and meal receptions that you may use to mingle, connect, and exchange. If you find value today in what will be proposed and discussed, we invite you to share your insights on social media. And we are ready to begin. Sunday, December 11th, 2022. Welcome to the opening plenary of the 7th Summit for Subnational Government and Cities. This event is yes, welcome. Now, this event is co-hosted by the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, Regions 4, along with the hosts, Government of Quebec and the City of Montreal, and with the support and engagement of the Province of Yunnan and the City of Kunming. Now, did you notice I started off with the date? Why? Because this is now the time, the start, the beginning of a historical moment. It is the first time, and this is really important, the first time at a biodiversity COP that there is a dedicated pavilion focusing entirely on subnational and local government actions and opportunities. We are talking, yes, this is something that is really important. We're talking about an unprecedented global milestone to welcome significantly strengthened contributions to the new post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Now, this summit is focused on one main thing, on taking action for biodiversity. And it'll be structured in 3 elements: engage, influence, and act. At the end, the outcome of this historic action-oriented summit will be presented formally by the hosts to the COP15 high-level segment as a united message from the subnational constituency. Now that you know what to expect for the next 48 hours, simple question: are you ready and do you want to be here? Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And this is something that's important. It's more than a simple generic thank you. If you've taken the time to be here, it's because often we say time is one of the most important resources we have as humans. And when we say we don't have time, it's not we don't have time. It's not a priority. If you are here today, listening, watching, being attentive right here, it's because you find value in what is presented. It has meaning to you. It has value to you and your surrounding. So thank you. That's what it means for being here today. And we're going to be starting off with a bit of those 3 themes. Engagement. Raise your hand if you have that superpower to engage. Raise your hand if you're ready to engage. Raise your hand for those that are ready to influence. Raise your hand, those that are ready to act. And this, we need everybody on this. Express yourself if you are ready to take action for biodiversity. Please express yourself. It is now time to begin with the Minister of International Relations de la Francophonie. Please welcome Martine Biron.
Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des gouvernements infranationaux et des villes, Monsieur le chef de l'Assemblée des Premières Nations du Québec et du Labrador, Madame la mairesse de la ville de Montréal, Monsieur le cofondateur de la Suzuki Foundation, chers amis et distingués invités, bonjour. Au nom de mon gouvernement, je vous souhaite d'abord la bienvenue dans cette belle métropole, si vous venez d'arriver. C'est une première occasion, je vous le dis, pour moi, de rencontrer certains d'entre vous. J'espère que ce sera le début d'une collaboration, d'une grande collaboration, surtout en ce qui concerne l'environnement et la biodiversité. Il faut absolument travailler ensemble et être des alliés si on veut s'attaquer aux grands défis climatiques qui se présentent devant nous. Le fait que nous soyons tous réunis ici démontre déjà que nous partageons une grande volonté de faire une différence pour le bien de notre planète. Le thème de cette rencontre, c'est « Agir pour la diversité ». Nous le savons, l'heure n'est plus à la réflexion, mais à l'action. Vous l'entendez certainement souvent, il est urgent de renverser le déclin qui frappe les espèces végétales et animales sur tous les continents, en plus d'assurer le maintien de nos fragiles écosystèmes. Les gouvernements infranationaux ainsi que les villes, nous sommes au front pour lutter contre ce déclin. Nous constatons les effets néfastes des comportements humains sur nos environnements. Nous savons faire preuve d'agilité pour agir concrètement et de manière ciblée. C'est d'ailleurs ce qu'a fait le premier ministre du Québec plus tôt cette semaine en annonçant une somme de 650 millions de dollars allouée au plan nature afin d'atteindre la cible de 30 % des aires protégées d'ici 2030. Je suis certaine que dans vos villes et dans vos États, vous avez des exemples d'initiatives que vous mettez en place pour lutter contre le déclin de la biodiversité. À bien des égards, cette COP est décisive. Le prochain cadre mondial sur la biodiversité est à nos portes. Il établira notre cadre d'action commun pour les années à venir en matière de protection de la diversité biologique. On a une opportunité pour relever notre niveau d'ambition, partager nos meilleures pratiques, consolider et renforcer nos collaborations dans le but de protéger notre nature. On a un rôle essentiel à jouer dans l'atteinte des prochaines cibles internationales du cadre mondial pour la nature, et c'est pourquoi nous devons faire entendre notre voix dans le cadre des négociations en cours, notamment à travers le Comité consultatif des gouvernements infranationaux et des villes. Nous arrivons bien préparés, notamment grâce au processus d'Édimbourg mis en place par l'Écosse au cours des dernières années pour valoriser le rôle des villes, des régions et des États fédérés au sein du prochain cadre mondial de la biodiversité. Notre ambition doit être globale, mais nos actions doivent être locales. En terminant, je tiens à remercier la Fondation David Suzuki d'être ici avec nous aujourd'hui et de nous offrir un segment d'ouverture historique. Il nous permet d'ailleurs d'établir un pont en deux moments importants de la lutte pour la protection de l'environnement, le sommet de la Terre de Rio en 1992, qui a vu naître la Convention sur la biodiversité biologique, et cette COP déterminante qui se déroule chez nous à Montréal. Alors, merci et bon sommet.
I'm Severn Suzuki, speaking for ECHO, the Environmental Children's Organization. We're a group of 12 and 13-year-olds trying to make a difference. Coming up here today, I have no hidden agenda. I am fighting for my future. Losing my future is not like losing an election or a few points on the stock market. I am here to speak for the countless animals dying across this planet because they have nowhere left to go. I am afraid to go out in the sun now because of the holes in our ozone. I am afraid to breathe the air because I don't know what chemicals are in it. I used to go fishing in Vancouver, my home, with my dad, until just a few years ago, we found the fish full of cancers. And now we hear of animals and plants going extinct, every day vanishing forever. In my life, I have dreamt of seeing the great herds of wild animals, jungles and rainforests full of birds and butterflies. But now I wonder if they will even exist for my children to see. Did you have to worry of these things when you were my age?
What we've just seen will be explained more in details in a few seconds as we get on with our next presentation. Joining us, as one maybe, as you know, a host of CBC TV's The Nature of Things, please welcome a widely recognized leader. Here he is. Without further ado, round of applause for Mr. David Suzuki.
Thank you for that. Thank you for keeping it short. I'm a biologist, and I think of our species in evolutionary terms. And for almost all of human existence, we lived in a state of nature, following animals and plants through the seasons and on their migrations. We understood that we are one small strand in a web of relationships with all other species of animals and plants, with the air, the water, the soil, and sunlight. This is an ecocentric perspective that Indigenous people continue to hold to the very present time. In such a world, our every action has repercussions because in a web, everything is connected to everything else. And so we have responsibility. This reciprocity of receiving from nature's generosity and responsibility to act properly is what is missing in so much of our actions today. Over recent millennia, we have removed ourselves from this web and transformed ourselves into a pyramid in which we are at the top and everything below is for us. This shapes everything that we do and think. We have created systems for our interactions, legal, economic, and political, that are all based on this anthropocentric way of seeing the world, with us on the top and everything for us. Nature becomes simply an opportunity rather than a sacred source of our lives and our livelihood. And so we elevate our rules of governance. And this is what will be involved here in the negotiations at COP. The rules of governance are our legal, political, and economic systems that are raised above the needs of nature to flourish and continue to be generous. We don't make fresh air. We don't make pure water. We don't make rich soil. Nature does, generates, cleanses, and replenishes these things. But in moving outside of nature, we act as if what we do to nature will have no consequences for us. When we plasticize the planet, do you think that we are immune? We are plasticizing ourselves. Every one of you is carrying plastic in your cells that are now a part of our bodies. When endocrine disruptors from plastic cause intersexes in fish, alligators with smaller penises, or frogs with extra legs, do we not think this might have implications for us? When we spray pesticides like neonicotinoids to kill insects, but those are nerve toxins, do we not think our nervous system will be affected? Chemicals like DDT, PCBs, dioxin are lipophilic. They're attracted to fatty tissue, like the shell glands of birds and the breasts of women. We are part of nature, and what we do to nature, we do directly to ourselves. It is very fitting that our conference this year is taking place in Montreal. It was here that we celebrated one of the few achievements in the environmental area. In 1987, when the Montreal Protocol on substances that delete the atmosphere was passed, the ozone layer was passed here in this city to control CFCs. The atmosphere is a fundamental part of nature, and in altering now the carbon content of the atmosphere, climate change is catastrophically impacting nature. Climate and biodiversity, nature, are inseparably interlinked. Now, I was asked just to come up and introduce my daughter. Severn, since she was an infant, of course, has been on marches and protests with my wife and me. When she was 9, we had the opportunity to go to Aokri, a tiny village in the heart of the Amazon, linked to the rest of the world only through water or air, a small airstrip. And we lived in this Kayapo village for 10 days, seeing how most of humanity lived for most of our existence. As we were flying out of Aokri, we could look down and see the consequences of gold mining taking place in the creeks and rivers. We could see the burning of people coming on the edge of the Kayapo territory. And so when we got back to Vancouver, Severn, at the age of 9, started ECHO, the Environmental Children's Organization, to go around explaining to people why it was important to protect forests. And in 1991, when she was 11, she came to me, she said, "Dad, I hear there's going to be a big meeting in Rio next year. Are you going?" I said, No, I don't go to those things. She said, "Well, I think that ECHO should go." I said, "What? Why?" She said, "I think all the grown-ups there are going to be talking and making decisions and not thinking about us, children." And so she raised the money herself. Well, my wife and I matched every dollar she raised. To my shock, she raised $14,000, and she took 5 children and 3 adults to Rio, to the Earth Summit. And they had a little booth, and they began to talk to the media and people. And James Grant, the executive director of UNICEF, heard her, and he told Maurice Strong, he said, "Maurice, you should put her on the agenda." And so he did. The day before she was to put on the agenda, he told her, "You have 5 minutes." And so she was frantically writing her speech, and I said, Sev, this is what you got to say." And she said, "Dad, I know what I want to say. I just want you to help me say it the right way." And so she went on, and you saw a part of the speech that she gave, that at the end of her talk, Al Gore came up and said, "That was the best speech anyone gave at the Earth Summit." She went on, graduated from Yale University, got a master's degree with Nancy Turner in ethnobiology, married a Haida, moved to Skidegate, a Haida village for 14 years, where she learned and is fluent in the Haida language, as are her 2 sons, and then began work on her PhD and in language, and is now the executive director of the David Suzuki Foundation. I'm just a proud dad, but I'm sorry to say that she tested positive for COVID this morning. But Saba Khan, the Director General of Quebec and Atlantic Canada for the David Suzuki Foundation, will deliver Severn's speech for her. So Saba, I hope you will come and do that.
Bonjour, chers délégués, Madame la Ministre, Madame la Mairesse. Je suis honorée d'être ici à Tiohtià:ke, Montréal, terre non cédée de la Kanien'kehá:ka, la nation Mohawk. Je m'appelle Saba Khan, je suis la directrice générale de la Fondation David Suzuki pour le Québec et l'Atlantique. Il y a 30 ans que Severn a pris la parole au sommet de la Terre à Rio. Le sommet de la Terre a été un moment où, comme aujourd'hui, le monde s'est réuni pour relever notre plus grand défi, notre relation avec la Terre. C'était le plus grand rassemblement de chefs d'État jamais organisé. 30 years later, as we gather here in the middle of an ongoing global health pandemic, we are faced with the fact that this morning, Severn tested COVID positive and could not stand before you to deliver this important anniversary address. I will now share with you the words she had prepared. The Rio Earth Summit was a generation ago. Today, people ask, why did Rio fail? I think the opposite. Rio Summit was a success. The Rio Declaration, Agenda 21, the Forest Principles. These are groundbreaking texts reflecting the world we are building, the humanity we want to become. The conference's aim was primarily to start the processes for how we would come together to engage on these issues. The frameworks set up then are still what we are using today. The legally binding United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Convention on Biodiversity, which has brought us here today. The failure was in implementation and acting on these words. The years after saw a huge rise in globalization. The 90s and the 2000s saw huge increases of multinational corporate power. And the goal of the corporation is unabashed profit. Not well-being, not justice, not a better world for our children who are nowhere in their list of stakeholders. My speech, made so long ago, can be summarized by the last line. You grown-ups say that you love us. Please make your actions reflect your words. Nos actions sont devenues découplées de nos paroles. Nous ne sommes pas ce que nous disons être. Nous sommes dans une crise de culture, une crise d'identité en tant qu'être humain. Today, I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. They are my world. When I had children, I realized why the speech I gave as a child affects people so deeply. Because of the greatest power belonging to the human species, the power of love. Because of the universal love parents have for their children, that people have for younger generations, it is our deepest human value and motivator. So how can we find ourselves here today when all the experts of our society are telling us we are driving ourselves off of an ecological cliff? Ever since the Earth Summit, I have struggled with this disconnect, this knowledge that love that adults have for their kids is real, but with the fact that they are all participating in the erosion of their future. How can this be? We are embedded in an infrastructure, a way of being, and a culture that is completely at odds with our deepest human value, which is love for our kin, our children, and our future generations. So today, at this 11th hour for biodiversity and climate, 30 years since Rio, the question is it possible for us to overcome this current infrastructure and momentum of culture and economy and practice that we have built? I am a mother, and I have an answer for you. We have no choice. Of course we must find a way. We have to do everything in our power to overcome these practices of destruction. It is completely within our power because, first, the answers are right here within our human family. And second, it is on the local level that we are already taking leadership. And finally, we have just seen with the pandemic that complete transformation is possible. After the Earth Summit, I continue to speak out for intergenerational justice. I attended several COPs. I was at the Kyoto Protocol Conference in 1997, Rio +5, Rio +10, COP11, right here in Montreal, and the last COP I attended, Rio +20. I also got an education. I went to school. I studied biology. I wanted to know more about the state of the natural world and what we were doing to it. I learned that indeed we are killing off the other species of life on Earth, that the extinction rate is 1,000 to 10,000 times the regular background rate of evolution. Today, 1 million species of fellow Earthlings are on their way to disappearing. But growing up, I was also privileged to have a parallel education because of my environmentalist parents' relationship with land defenders. I learned from First Nation aunties and uncles up and down the west coast of BC and across Turtle Island, who showed me a total different way of seeing the world. This education showed a different path strongly exists for humanity. Gwaganad Diane Brown taught me that I am no greater than a grain of sand and am no less than a mountain. That everything depends on everything else. That respect is a key to a good and purposeful life. Quaksiktala Adam Dick taught me, if you take only what you need and share what you have, there will always be enough. Hilistus Antipali Waterfall taught me that in culture there is healing and purpose. Chief Haulikat Frida Hewson of Inustoten and Ellen Gabriel of Ganesitage were examples of what modern warriors look like. What incredibly different teachings from my globalized mainstream culture. These teachings gave me deep hope for our humankind. I believe that had I not had these teachings as a youth, in the years after the Earth Summit, I would have become lost. Ethnobiologist Wade Davis has just written, quote, "We are living through what many scientists have called the sixth great extinction, and the first to be caused exclusively by our species. But there is an important distinction to be made. Extinction, along with climate change, threatens all of humanity, but neither was caused by humanity as a whole. Instead, they came about as a consequence of a particular worldview, relatively new to the human experience and not shared by the vast majority of the peoples of the world. Understanding this dynamic is essential. It is the key that opens new realms of possibilities, generating the promise, in the words of Father Thomas Berry, of a new dream of the earth," end quote. Today I know that it is not humans as a species that are destroying the earth. It is one mindset of humans that is destroying earth. One dominant paradigm that has taken over all, that is eating the future. This is the paradigm that we are participating in today. This is the paradigm that must end. It is a globalized paradigm, one that has removed all forms of social accountability for eating the earth and for how we treat each other. And there are so many examples of how to be different. Indigenous peoples oversee 20% of the planet's territories, yet house 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. That stat alone, as we face this mass extinction event, should be evidence enough for giving the land back. That is why the Indigenous and traditional peoples here, outside of the agreements, the formal negotiations, are so critical. Even though colonial societies continue to try to get them out of the way, they have survived. They are still here, and through their very existence, humanity has a chance to make it through. We need their leadership to be embedded in all our practices, our decision-making. We need to give land back and empower them to govern their own lands, support them to recover traditional practices and values. We must listen to them. We must uphold them as leaders. Cities are the ones that are and must act on the momentum of reconciliation as a means for addressing biodiversity loss. The second thing we have going is leadership on the local level. While the lack of leadership on the national scale can be appalling, on the scale of municipalities, communities, villages, we have hope. The gap of national leadership has been filled by subnational governance. We saw this when, in 2017, former President Donald Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, and 468 US mayors, representing 74 million Americans, declared that they would adopt, honor, and uphold the commitments to the goals in the Paris Agreement. Local communities are the real actors. That is the human scale. Communities and cities are where people live, where people experience nature, where they are hit by the impacts of pollution or climate change. 80% of the world's mega cities are coastal or influenced by the ocean, and that means that they are at risk of rising sea levels. And cities are where we are finding solutions and filling the leadership vacuum. You here at the 7th Summit know this well. Action is on the municipal, human scale. That is where we can actually commit to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. This is where we are banning toxic plastics and cosmetic pesticides. On the municipal front is where we must embed equitable decision-making and practices that will uphold environmental justice for all. This is where we will need to implement and embed natural infrastructures. And at this scale, we're there. Cities and communities are already leading the way in thousands of ways all over the planet. Dans les communautés qui ont relocalisé les systèmes alimentaires, les gens ont pu nourrir les personnes dans le besoin pendant la pandémie. C'est ce qui s'est passé dans le sud de l'Inde, où l'intégration de la conservation de la biodiversité aux moyens de subsistance agricole par la Deccan Development Society a assuré désormais la souveraineté alimentaire et la sécurité économique. Et à Pisac, dans la région de Cusco au Pérou, 6 communautés autochtones quechua gouvernent le parquet de la Papa, où elles protègent la région en tant que territoire de patrimoine bioculturel, où elles conservent plus de 1300 variétés de pommes de terre. Cities are leading the charge on banning toxics and pollutants, including the city of Montreal, that joined the growing number of cities banning glyphosate pesticides, therefore limiting toxics in the environment. Montreal also endorsed the Global Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty this year. This summer, Regina, a prairie city, passed an energy and sustainability framework to halve emissions by 2030. In the hottest part of Canada, the Fraser Canyon in BC, the Kanaka Bar Band is a small community that is actively building the future. They are the community next to the town of Lytton that burned to the ground last year. They are establishing an Indigenous protected area in their forests, which are some of the rarest and most endangered old-growth forests in the province. But they have also listened to the science and prepared themselves for climate change. They have built a run of river hydro. They have put in culverts, put in a cell tower, and are producing 25% of their own food. They are even helping their neighbors who lived in Lytton by building homes for them so that they can live closer to their old town. They are building the future. Finally, we know that we are completely capable of a true emergency response to an existential crisis. In 2019, if you had have told me that governments of the world would work across party lines, move billions of dollars, listen to science to find solutions to an existential crisis, and that all of us would radically transform how we live, I would not have believed you. Yet after COVID-19, here we are. We have just proved to ourselves we can do the impossible. COVID has reminded us some profound truths that we forget. That nature is the true bottom line. That science and data are crucial for our survival. That we are all interconnected. That what each of us does has ramifications, for better or for worse. In this moment, we must internalize these important lessons that COVID has brought in order to reconnect the words we tell our children with our actions. Mesdames et messieurs, nous ne disposons pas de 30 années supplémentaires. We do not have another 30 years. We still have a chance to show our children what our love means. Let us show them by making our actions reflect our words. Thank you.
we are now ready to continue with the Chief of the Assembly of the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador. Please welcome warmly Ghislain Picard.
Madame Martine Biron, ministre des Relations internationales et de la Francophonie, Madame Valérie Plante, Madame la mairesse de Montréal, Monsieur David Suzuki, Mesdames et Messieurs, aux dignitaires également qui se joignent à nous aujourd'hui, et en particulier aux dignitaires étrangers, bienvenue sur nos territoires. J'aimerais d'abord reconnaître que nous tenons ce sommet en territoire ancestral autochtone non cédé, un lieu connu sous le nom de Tiohtià:ke en Kanien'kehá:ka et Mounian en Anishinaabe-Inuk. We recognize that the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation are stewards of the lands and waters of this territory, which has long been a place where meetings and exchanges among our nations have occurred. We've always said that there's a close relationship between our indigenous languages and biodiversity. Let me add that this is the decade of indigenous languages worldwide. Je suis très heureux de prendre la parole ce matin, même si je ne représente pas un gouvernement infranational. Pour être clair, l'Assemblée des Premières Nations Québec-Labrador, que j'ai le privilège de présider, n'est pas un gouvernement, mais il s'agit d'une instance politique qui regroupe des gouvernements, de véritables gouvernements, distincts et autonomes. Let me be clear. First Nation governments are not subnational governments. We are governments in our own right. We have territories that are managed by others. Nous formons aussi des peuples distincts, possédant le droit à l'autodétermination, droit reconnu par la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones. The United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples also recognizes our right to the lands, territories, and resources which we have traditionally owned, we still occupy, or otherwise used or acquired. Est-il besoin de rappeler que nous occupons ces territoires ancestraux depuis des milliers d'années et qu'il existe une filiation naturelle entre nous, comme peuple autochtone, et notre environnement? Nos ancêtres nous ont transmis la responsabilité de veiller au respect de la terre-mère. Depuis longtemps, avant que le concept soit créé, nous pratiquons ce qu'on appelle le développement durable, que nos décisions prises aujourd'hui doivent mener à un avenir meilleur pour les 7 prochaines générations. Sur la base de ce principe et de notre responsabilité, je me fais le porte-parole des gouvernements de Premières Nations pour vous dire que nous avons dépassé le temps des ambitions, terme que nous recyclons d'une COP à la suivante. We need action, real, concrete, now. As custodians of our ancestral territories, I can confirm that the exploitation of territories and resources continues et que les mesures mises en place par les gouvernements sont insuffisantes. Prenons l'exemple du caribou forestier, une espèce menacée par l'exploitation forestière. Le caribou, Menashquaoatiku, est un animal sacré pour mon peuple, le peuple Innu. Quand on parle de protéger la biodiversité, il faut donc comprendre que c'est la survie de nos peuples dont il est question. J'espère que ce message sera au cœur de nos échanges. Je vous remercie et vous souhaite un bon sommet. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghislain, Picard. And we can sense a common theme coming as we are reflecting and discussing is that sense of urgency that is now very present. As we get ready now for our next part, our next speaker is the first woman to ever be elected as mayor of Montreal in its 375 years of history. She's an ICLEI Global Ambassador for Local Biodiversity and has always shown a true commitment on the protection of the environment and of nature. Currently serving her second term, please welcome the Mayor of Montreal, Mayor Valérie Plante.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everybody. Such a pleasure to be here. Ça me fait très plaisir d'être avec vous. Permettez-moi de saluer plusieurs de mes collègues, bien sûr la ministre Martine Biron. C'est un plaisir de travailler ensemble, Martine. Je tiens également à saluer tous les représentants et les représentantes des gouvernements infranationaux, les maires, les mairesses et tous les collègues du milieu municipal à travers le monde. Le chef Ghislain Picard, merci Ghislain d'être avec nous. Je tiens également à saluer Mme Sabakane qui a pris la relève ce matin pour Mme Severn Cullis-Suzuki, qui est la directrice générale de Québec-Atlantique de la Fondation David Suzuki. And I'll end by saying a special good morning and hello to David Suzuki, and hopefully Severn can hear us right now. It is very precious to have David Suzuki and Severn with us here in Montreal for this COP. As a young woman, but also a young activist for social justice, I've always been very inspired by David Suzuki's work, and I want to say also passion and dedication. And then Severn decided to follow the path of her parents, and the video we saw of her at the UN, it actually gave me chills because it did take a lot of courage then, and she is still a very courageous woman. And David and Severn have been, with their work and, like I was saying, dedication, but they've been constant in wanting to educate people and wanted to bring a very strong message about the environment and the importance of protecting the environment. And for David, especially in a time where it wasn't very popular to talk about the environment, where we thought, we'll think about it later. So to both of you, David and Severn, I want to thank you again for everything you've been doing, everything you will continue to do, and thank you for inspiring us here at this COP. Permettez-moi de rappeler, à mon tour, de reconnaître que nous sommes en territoire autochtone traditionnel non cédé, et je tiens à remercier la nation ghanéenne Guéaga de son hospitalité. Et c'est un grand honneur pour moi, à titre de mairesse de Montréal, de vous accueillir ici pour le 7e sommet des gouvernements infranationaux et des villes, ICLEI, dans le cadre de la COP15. Vous le savez aussi bien que moi, les gouvernements locaux et leurs populations sont souvent les premiers frappés par les impacts du déclin de nos écosystèmes. Mais nous sommes des acteurs clés qui agissent rapidement pour la protection de la biodiversité. En tant qu'ambassadrice ICLEI pour la biodiversité locale, c'est un message que je transmets et que je partage partout à travers le monde et sur toutes les tribunes possibles. Grâce à votre présence, à vous tous et toutes ici aujourd'hui à Montréal pour la COP15, c'est un message que nous transmettons ensemble et j'en suis extrêmement fière. La COP15 est la plus importante de l'histoire et les villes et les gouvernements infranationaux ont répondu présent. Les impacts que nous subissons sont de plus en plus importants. On le vit bien sûr à tous les niveaux, mais encore une fois, au niveau local, c'est très frappant. On le voit, on le sent et nos communautés nous en parlent. Certains insectes pollinisateurs qui sont responsables du tiers de l'alimentation mondiale disparaissent. L'érosion gruge nos berges. Les espèces envahissantes se multiplient. And so we have big challenges ahead of us, and we are already facing and going through the negative impact of not doing enough in the past. And so now we have no time left. We need to act. We need to take courageous decisions, and we need to do it for our citizens who are asking us to have that courage. And it's sometimes, and actually often something I hear, people are ready, but we need to lead the way. We need to sometimes make difficult decisions. But it is our role as subnational governments and cities to take that leadership and to show the way, because we need to do it for our citizens today, but also the citizens of tomorrow. C'est pour cette raison que tout le monde ici est convaincu, comme moi, que les villes et les gouvernements infranationaux font partie de la solution. On est des alliés dans la lutte pour la protection de la biodiversité. Comme pour les changements climatiques, l'équilibre des écosystèmes n'a pas de frontières, puis ça dépend de nous tous et de nous toutes. Yesterday, I had the great pleasure to walk with the civil society. We did this march in the streets of Montreal. It was great to see families, our young adults, the elders were there. We were all together. And I know you experienced that type of protest walk, or at least those march, in your cities as well. And again, it just shows how people are ready. And they keep saying the same thing. Please, come up with an ambitious agreement. We need to succeed in this COP because biodiversity is at the bottom of life and protecting nature. And the other message to say is, there is no time to waste. Alors, c'est pourquoi, au cours des prochains jours, nous devons rappeler que les villes et les gouvernements locaux sont des partenaires essentiels et incontournables de ce qui se passe en haut à la COP15, à la grande table de négociation. La majorité de la population, il faut le rappeler, habite en milieu urbain. Ça fait qu'augmenter d'année après année, et ça, c'est à travers le monde. Les solutions doivent donc s'appliquer dans les milieux urbains. À Montréal, je suis fière de vous dire qu'on agit. Et je sais que dans vos villes, vous agissez aussi. Il y a des centaines de milliers de villes qui font la même chose. Et s'il y a une chose que je retiens des conversations que j'ai avec vous tous et toutes et à différents moments, c'est que les villes et les gouvernements subnationaux veulent en faire plus. Ils veulent en faire plus, mais pour ça, il faut avoir des ressources et qu'on soit concertés, que nos efforts soient coordonnés. Parce que l'impact de l'action des villes, elle ne se limite pas, comme je disais, à notre territoire. Quand on fait un geste concret dans une ville, ça a un impact sur une région et nécessairement, ça a un impact sur une province, un État et, au final, sur tout le pays. Alors, quand on pense aux gestes concrets qui sont faits par les villes, et je suis sûre que vous êtes plusieurs à pouvoir nommer des exemples, à nommer de bonnes pratiques, des projets porteurs qui ont un impact, encore une fois, direct. Et pour moi, c'est ça la force des villes et des gouvernements subnationaux, l'effet direct, action-réaction. À Montréal, nous, ce qu'on a décidé de faire, c'est d'axer nos efforts sur la création et la protection des espaces verts, de dédier des budgets pour acheter, développer des espaces verts, créer des corridors de biodiversité, interdire les pesticides, interdire le plastique à usage unique, protéger les pollinisateurs. Énormément de gestes concrets. Alors, ce n'est pas les idées qui manquent pour rendre nos villes plus vertes et résilientes, mais encore une fois, pour ça, on a besoin du soutien des gouvernements supérieurs. Puis la réalité, c'est que pour protéger la biodiversité, bien, on doit tous travailler ensemble. Je le dis souvent, bien sûr les gouvernements, mais ça demande également la société civile, les entreprises, les jeunes et les communautés autochtones. D'ailleurs, permettez-moi de prendre un bon exemple d'un partenariat qui marche. La collaboration qu'on voit aujourd'hui dans la COP15, cette collaboration qui existe entre le gouvernement du Canada, le gouvernement du Québec et la Ville de Montréal, pour moi, est porteur. Quand on combine nos efforts, les pays, les gouvernements subnationaux et les villes, on peut avoir un impact beaucoup plus grand. C'est vraiment dans cet esprit-là que je souhaite porter le plaidoyer auprès des partis pour rappeler la nécessité d'avoir les villes et les gouvernements subnationaux autour de la table. Because the message is very clear, is that if we want to succeed in this, and we have to, we need to work together. Because together, we can go faster and further to protect biodiversity. And like I was saying, not only we can do it, but we have to ensure a thriving planet for our generation and the next to come. And my final words will be that the world is watching us. Le monde nous regarde et compte sur nous. Merci.
Thank you. And Mayor Plante, we invite you to please stay on stage with us. We invite you to please stay on stage with us, as we'd like to invite also our fellow members to come and join us. Just come here dead center. Thank you so much for those words, and we'll be coming back to that. So we'd like to invite as well Minister Biron to come and join us, Mayor Plante, Kobe Brand to join us as we head off for our next part of our presentation. Once again, as they are coming on stage, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for taking the time. We are heading off for the official handover of the baton ceremony. Our next segment is a performance from an inspiring Canadian Inuk from the north. Not only singer, songwriter, broadcaster, documentary filmmaker, and activist. We'll have a chance of seeing her. And this is really amazing because that stage presence and energy will speak for itself. Please welcome, this is Elisapi.
Merci Jean-Sébastien Williams. Nakormi Marelok. Merci Ghislain et la vote tunga sutisi yutamani nuna hakasimayu nuna aloni. Merci Nakormi Valérie, Jean, ces gens extraordinaires qui font des choses formidables parce que on travaille fort. We are working very hard as indigenous peoples of this land to really try to make Quebec understand, Quebec government understand that first of all and foremost, we need to be heard, we need to be acknowledged, we need to be celebrated. Among Francophone language, there are also our languages that are very important in order for Quebec to be even richer. Alors pour continuer à travailler fort pour que le Québec gouvernement puisse reconnaître le racisme systémique, we really need you guys, and we need the people, all international people, to really support us. And we have been getting amazing recognition for our cultures. So I'm very honored to be here. I'm not going to speak long because a lot of people are talking enough. They have a lot to say. So I will deliver my music simply, but I also want to acknowledge Mr. David Suzuki, because as a kid, we would watch him on TV with The Nature of Things. My father, who's an Inuk hunter who spoke no English, would watch his show, and I would try to translate a little bit, but I really didn't have to, because these are our traditional land protectors. My grandfather also, they are amazing hunters, amazing knowledge that I wish they could share with you, because I think they would be amazing professors. But I think we need to really remind ourselves, and they always remind us, that we are tiny, tiny, tiny little beings in this huge nature that we are trying to control, and the land will come back and really revenge on us if we don't respect it, because it needs to be protected, because the land and the nature is the boss, right? So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to us. And I hope we can make changes together. Merci. Nakormi Marelo. This song is by Mr. Willie Thrasher, who's a residential school survivor. He's an Inuk singer-songwriter that I looked up to as a kid. He wrote a song in '81 called Wolves Don't Live by the Rules. 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 Valleys to hills, you can hear the cry. They have to fight to stay alive. No one can change it. Mother Nature knows the reason why. Oh, wolves don't live by the rules. Wolves don't live by the rules. Nakormek Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisapi.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Though I cannot be there in person until tomorrow, I want to welcome you all to the start of the 7th Summit for Subnational Governments and Cities. We have come a long way since 2010. In Nagoya, Japan, parties to the Convention of Biological Diversity formally recognized the role of subnational governments for the first time. Since then, cities have pioneered many innovations. For example, highway underpasses for wildlife and the re-oystering of harbors. More parks and street trees can all add up to greater biodiversity in cities. However, much more remains to be done. The development of the green space at the edge of cities is accelerating. Many of us here today supported the City Biodiversity Outlook. Launched in 2013, it was the first global assessment of cities and biodiversity. It predicted that cities would more than double their sizes by 2030. Unfortunately, the prevailing development model is based on sprawl, segregation, and privatization. The human habitat we are building is out of balance with our natural habitat. We have many inspiring examples of habitat restoration, but they cannot keep up with the accelerating destruction. Fortunately, we have several tools to prevent this. I will talk more about this tomorrow. Meanwhile, I want to leave you with 3 messages. First, doing things right offers many synergies. Curbing sprawl not only conserves the natural habitat, but also reduces the transmission of deadly diseases. Second, doing things at scale, like providing basic services during the COVID-19 pandemic, must be the new normal. Third, cities cannot do it alone. National policies and international agendas need to finance sustainable urban development. I wish you a fruitful discussion today and look forward to seeing you in person tomorrow.
Madame la ministre des Relations internationales et de la Francophonie, Madame la mairesse de Montréal, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to represent the Food and Agriculture Organization at the 7th Summit for Subnational Governments and Cities. More than half of the world lives in urban areas, and that number keeps rising everywhere. Cities use almost 80% of the world's energy and 70% of the food supply. Urban sprawl often occurs at the expense of natural ecosystems and agricultural land, exposing urban communities to climate change impacts, as it has been already said, floods, droughts, landslides, coastal erosion, as well as to air pollution and lack of fresh water. Recent floods in Nigeria and Pakistan, cities are dramatic examples. Ecosystem and green spaces, with their rich biodiversity around and in cities, can build resilient urban communities. They can provide adaptation to climate, protect from risk, improve physical and mental health, food and nutrition security, and create green jobs. Indeed, the proposed 2020 framework recognizes the value of increasing green spaces in urban areas, including for human health and well-being. Local and national authorities should work to protect agricultural land and ecosystem and sustainably manage land use around and in cities. Land use and urban planning are key tools to balance healthy environment with productivity, reconnect cities with rural areas, and support resilience. As part of its commitments to greener and more food-secure cities, in 2020, the FAO launched the Green Cities Initiative to focus on, 1, restoring ecosystem services, including through urban and peri-urban forestry, providing affordable and sustainable diets for all, and creating new jobs opportunities via circular bioeconomy practices. More and more cities are taking green actions, for example, with comprehensive policies on green areas, urban gardening, and sustainable agriculture practices for local food supply. Our host city of Montreal is also recognized for its greening actions. We need to learn more from each other, as the mayor said, to better coordinate among cities. Together with UNEP and ICLEI, FAO contributes to the City Challenge of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. FAO recently joined the Sustainable Urban Resilience for the Next Generation initiative, launched by UN Habitat at COP27 to accelerate local and urban climate action. Let's join forces to preserve our ecosystem and biodiversity for greener, healthier, and more sustainable cities, ensuring a greater engagement with subnational government, cities, and local authorities to ensure the inclusion of all levels of the governments in the implementation of the post-2020 framework for a better future for all. And I thank you.
We cannot have a healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and the ocean's health is measurably in decline. As emphasized at the United Nations Ocean Conference earlier this year, there's a need for coastal cities to learn from one another and take concrete action to protect, manage, and restore vulnerable urban coastal ecosystems. We value ICLEI's critical role in mobilizing local and subnational governments to achieve this. And the 7th Summit for Cities and Subnational Governments will be a vital milestone to take this action forward. It's significant that the Cities with Nature and Regions with Nature Global Partnership Initiatives developed by ICLEI and partners include an ocean and coasts track. And we look forward to working closely with ICLEI to expand this further. Most notably, the United Nations SCBD recognizes the Cities with Nature Action Platform as the platform where subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities report on their actions and voluntary commitments to the Global Biodiversity Framework. We stand by you in the next days at this critical juncture as you share and solidify subnational and local actions for protection, restoration, and enhancement of biodiversity across the world. And thank you for your attention.
Good day to you all. My name is Kim Hui, Managing Director at the World Economic Forum, and I oversee our climate and nature activities. It is my pleasure to join you at the 7th Summit for Subnational Governments and Cities, focused on taking action for biodiversity. First, allow me to congratulate the ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, the city's Biodiversity Center, and its partners in engaging local and subnational governments to build a world where biodiversity and people can thrive. Investing into nature brings returns across all dimensions and creates intergenerational wealth. For example, green infrastructure such as mangrove, wetlands, and watersheds can enhance the performance of traditional infrastructure built for flood protection. Nature-based solutions can deliver close to 40% of climate mitigation needed through 2030. And we know that green spaces and biodiversity in cities are not just social equalizers that all can enjoy. It also enhances positive health outcomes and improves the intellectual vigor of the people who live within them. There has been growing interest from companies and governments to invest more into this untapped potential. At the World Economic Forum, we recently released a report on the future of nature and business that illustrates how a nature-positive pathway in the infrastructure and built environment could create over $3 trillion in business opportunities and more than 100 million jobs by 2030. These opportunities are best unlocked through public-private partnership at the global, regional, and local levels. The World Economic Forum's Biodiversities by 2030 initiative that is run in collaboration with the government of Colombia is one such collaboration. It supports city governments, businesses, and citizens around the world to create a virtuous urban development model where economic, social, and nature thrive together in harmony. As we collaborate to explore pathways for net zero and nature-positive transitions in the coming days, I would like to share with you 3 reflections. First, be intentional in developing the multi-stakeholder partnerships so that the collective is more than the sum of the parts. Unlock the power of perspectives and partnerships. 1 + 1 should be more than 2. The collaboration and partnership should be ambitious and seek to catalyze and drive transformative rather than incremental outcomes. Second, adopt a holistic and systemic approach and look for impact multipliers. Explore and prioritize solutions that not just address biodiversity, climate, and enhance water and food security, but also think about how these solutions could create new jobs, provide livelihoods, skills, and capabilities for the next generation. Third, let us find ways to bring the conversations and solutions to every dinner conversation. We are all in this together. We are all part of the system that created the problems of today, and we can all be part of the solutions of tomorrow. Many of us may ask, what can we do in our respective roles and capacities, and what is within our means to do so? But this is not enough. Time is running out, and the crisis is already upon us. Instead of asking what we can do, I would urge all of you to ask what we need to do to rise up to this crisis of our generation. Let us leave no stones unturned. On this note, I wish all of you a very productive summit with rich conversations, rich connections, and rich collective action. Thank you.
Well, bonjour, good morning. My name is Wade Crowfoot, and I come from California in the United States, where I help to protect nature and biodiversity. I'm very excited to be here and inspired by the warm welcome we've received from Indigenous communities whose ancestral lands we're meeting on. I'm also deeply thankful to our friends in the Chinese government and the government of Quebec for bringing us together in this important moment in time. Now, we know why we're here, because the world can't wait for bolder action to protect nature and biodiversity. Our climate crisis demands more nature-based solutions to reduce pollution, to buffer communities from climate impacts, and to capture and remove carbon from our atmosphere. All life on Earth depends on us stemming the alarming and worsening extinction crisis. And we know we need to reconnect communities and people that have been disconnected from nature. particularly in our Indigenous communities and our marginalized communities. Now, while we applaud nation states for coming together this week in Montreal to negotiate a global compact, we know that our governments, provinces, states, and cities are essential to confronting the nature crisis. It's our policies, land conservation, water protection, pollution reduction, urban planning, unique partnerships with Indigenous communities and marginalized communities within our jurisdictions that is actually going to make a difference on stemming this crisis. Now, in California, we are 100% committed, working with you all around the world in a united effort to reverse these trends and to confront the nature crisis. We have grown to the 4th largest economy in the world while maintaining strong and innovative environmental protections. We know that economic growth and prosperity go hand in hand with nature protection and restoration. At the same time, our large state, 100 million acres, about 40 million hectares, 1,100 miles of coastline, or about 1,700 kilometers of coastline, this area we have in California is a biodiversity hotspot. Scientists identify a remarkably rich variety of life under urgent and worsening stressors. So we know in California we need to do more. And thanks to our leaders, we're doing that. Our governor, over 2 years ago, set a clear and bold commitment to a 30 by 30 target, conserving, protecting 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030, based on a strong, scientifically based definition of what's conserved. Our legislators, many of whom are with us this week, followed up on that commitment by allocating over $1 billion to this 30 by 30 effort and nature-based solutions. And we are actively considering changing and potentially growing our marine protected area network off our coasts, which is 124 underwater protected parks to protect our biodiversity and environment in our coastal waters. So we are here to learn from you and to learn from each other about how we can move further and faster on these efforts. We're excited to share what we're doing and what we've learned and demonstrate that we collectively can do this. And ultimately, through the summit today, to build our momentum as subnational governments, as provinces, states, and cities, getting it done. While our nation states work toward a global compact, we know we need to drive a parallel effort to put these policies, these programs in place to make progress now. I love nature. I love being outdoors, and I'm proud to be raising an 8-year-old daughter who cares for animals and nature and is so concerned as she's learning about what's happening around the fate of her planet. And I think we owe it to her, we owe it to all of our kids, our grandkids, future generations, to be the people that are making a difference today. We have a quote at our new agency building at our Capitol in California, and it's by the poet Gary Snyder. And it says, "Nature is not a place we visit. Nature is home." So given all of the crises, all of the challenges we face, we know now is the time to protect our nature, to protect our home, to show the world that we can get this done. And I'm excited to do that along with you. Thank you very much.
Citizens from all around the world. Now, these are people exactly like you and I. And just as Mayor Plounce said, more than half of humanity already lives in cities. In the following video you'll be seeing, they share the desire for a more sustainable urban environment.
The total area covered by the world's cities is set to triple in the next 40 years as millions of people continue to move into cities every week. This exacerbates the triple planetary crisis we face: biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. Cities and regions are where transformative change needs to happen, where nature-positive decisions need to be made. Cities can control the way they change and grow, the way they work with all stakeholders to protect biodiversity, restore ecosystems, provide safe and accessible green open spaces, and reconnect people with nature. Many cities and regions are already taking action.
I love that my city is home to a variety of bird species that I can see and hear every day.
I love that my city has safe, accessible pathways and open green spaces so that I can walk or cycle to work surrounded by nature.
I love that my city organises activities in our parks for young and old alike.
I love that my city cares enough about nature to mainstream it into policies and plans.
J'adore le fait que ma ville me donne un espace sûr où je peux faire de la gym et du yoga dehors.
I love that my city supports urban food gardens where people of varying age, gender, race, and economic backgrounds come together, creating social cohesion and contributing to food security.
I love that my city has world-class wetlands on its doorstep that protect us from flooding.
I love that my city connects me to culturally diverse people through shared nature experiences.
I love that my city encourages me to learn about nature by creating biodiversity gardens.
I love that my city respects my culture by protecting our natural, spiritual spaces.
Sadly, not all cities and regions offer these benefits to their citizens. Many cities experience severe traffic congestion, choking air pollution, poor water quality, crippling drought, devastating floods, food insecurity, worsening health crises, massive waste disposal problems, and lack of access to safe green spaces. Coupled with this is escalating extreme weather events associated with climate change, growing poverty, rising inequality, social exclusion, and increased wars and conflicts.
The city I want respects and protects nature. Recognizing the value in nature is essential in our social, economic, and cultural well-being.
C'est un engagement significatif des jeunes générations dans la prise de décision, tout en garantissant l'inclusion de la biodiversité dans la planification urbaine.
The region I want protects its watershed, its rivers, for the benefit of everybody downstream.
The city I want provides green, clean, safe, and accessible open spaces for everyone, for old and young, to enjoy.
The city that I want is one where I can breathe freely, a city that puts the health of its citizens first.
I want cities that invest in planting trees, green roofs, and green walls to cool the city.
It is within cities and regions that daily decisions are made that directly and often irreversibly impact nature and people.
Our planet can no longer support the misuse and mismanagement of our natural resources. The loss of biodiversity across the globe is inextricably linked to the acceleration of climate crisis
and the degradation of ecosystems we rely on to help sustain our communities and way of life. We need to take bold action now.
No city or region can afford to take nature for granted, nor make any decision that is not nature positive. We need to make peace with nature now and set the world on a new trajectory, one in which people are reconnected with nature, one in which nature is truly valued for its contributions to our lives, one in which cities and regions take bold action to create a more equitable and sustainable urban future. Right here, right now, at this historic moment for our planet, you need to rise to the challenge and take action for biodiversity. Join Cities with Nature and Regions with Nature now to reshape our future together.